Welcome back to Skytech-Lens. The long-running trade saga between the US and Canada has a new twist. This time, it's about the environment. Canada has announced a carbon border fee on imported lumber, targeting wood from countries like the US based on its pollution footprint. This move could raise the cost of building homes in the US and intensify the decades-old lumber dispute. The fee is Canada's response to recent US tariff changes on Canadian lumber. While US builders hoped for cheaper Canadian wood, Canada's carbon fee upends those expectations. By linking trade policy to climate goals, Canada is signaling it will defend its industries and environmental agenda, even if it means more tension with its biggest trading partner. The situation is tense. Former President Trump has ordered an investigation into whether Canadian lumber threatens US national security, possibly leading to more tariffs. For American families, this isn't just politics. It could hit their wallets. Lumber prices are a major factor in home costs, so any change affects affordability for thousands. This story is about more than trade. It's about the future of housing, the economy, and the environment in both countries. We'll break down why Canada's doing this, how the fee works, and what it means for home buyers. We'll also look at how this could reshape the housing market, already under pressure. Let's dive into how a trade fight over wood could shape the American dream. The US-Canada lumber dispute, often called the Lumber Wars, has dragged on for over a century. The core issue: US lumber producers say Canadian companies have an unfair edge because they harvest wood from public land at lower costs. In response, the US has repeatedly slapped tariffs on Canadian softwood lumber to level the playing field. These tariffs have fluctuated wildly depending on politics and trade deals. In 2021, tariffs soared above 17%, then dropped, only to spike again recently. Builders cheered when the US cut tariffs to 4% in July 2025, hoping for cheaper materials. But just days later, the US reversed course, raising duties to over 27%, shocking the industry. This sudden move pushed Canada to act. Instead of fighting the same old battle, Canada introduced a new weapon, a carbon border fee based on environmental impact. The lumber wars have entered a new era, one where climate policy and trade are now inseparable. The next chapter, it's all about carbon. Let's see how this fee actually works. A carbon border fee is a charge on imports based on how much carbon pollution was created making the product. If a product is made with dirty energy, it pays a higher fee at the border. Canada's goal: protect its own lumber industry, which already pays a domestic carbon tax, and ensure foreign competitors face similar costs. This levels the playing field and encourages cleaner production. The second goal: push other countries, like the US, to cut emissions. If US producers want to avoid the fee, they'll need to clean up their operations. This fee is part of a global trend. The EU has a similar system, and Canada is adapting it for lumber. By tying trade to climate action, Canada is both retaliating against US tariffs and positioning itself as a green leader. The message: if you want to sell in Canada, you must account for your environmental impact. This isn't just a trade fight, it's a new way of doing business. The cost of a product now includes its carbon footprint. So, how do Canadian and US lumber compare? The key difference between Canadian and US lumber is carbon intensity, the amount of greenhouse gases released during production. Canadian sawmills, especially in Quebec and British Columbia, run mostly on clean hydroelectric power, resulting in low emissions. Canadian spruce pine fir lumber averages about 145 kilograms of CO2 per cubic meter. In contrast, US mills, especially in the South, rely heavily on fossil fuels, pushing their carbon intensity to around 235 kilograms per cubic meter, over 60% higher. Canada's carbon fee targets imports with a carbon intensity more than 20% above the Canadian average. US lumber easily exceeds this threshold and will face the full fee. This isn't just a random penalty, it's based on real data about energy use and emissions. Canada is using its cleaner energy mix as a competitive advantage. Now let's see how this fee changes the numbers for builders and buyers. The US tariff cut on Canadian lumber was supposed to lower prices for American builders. Experts predicted a drop from $570 to $515 per thousand board feet, saving the industry $110 million a year. But Canada's carbon border fee, about $28 CAD per ton of emissions, adds $24 per thousand board feet of US lumber sold in Canada. This new cost ripples through the North American market, erasing most of the savings from the US tariff cut. The expected price drop for lumber in the US is now much smaller, or may not happen at all. For builders, it's a major disappointment. Budgets based on lower prices are suddenly in doubt. The complex dance of tariffs and fees means lumber costs will likely stay high. The hope for cheaper homes is fading. Let's look at what this means for American families chasing the dream of homeownership. The numbers tell a sobering story. For many Americans, owning a home is the ultimate dream, but soaring prices have made it harder than ever. Lumber is a key cost, making up about 6% of a new home's price. When the US cut tariffs, home buyers hoped for savings, about $760 per house. But Canada's carbon fee wipes out most of that, leaving only a few dollars in monthly savings on a 30-year mortgage. For families, this tiny difference does little to make homes more affordable. With high interest rates and inflated property values, the dream of homeownership remains out of reach for many. The trade fight over lumber is now hitting American families directly. Instead of relief, buyers face stubbornly high costs. The American dream is on hold for thousands, and the timing couldn't be worse. The new trade dispute comes as the US housing market is cooling. Mortgage rates have jumped to nearly 6.7%, making monthly payments more expensive and shrinking the pool of buyers. Home prices are starting to dip, and consumer confidence is low. Only 18% think it's a good time to buy. In a slowing market, higher material costs are especially damaging. Builders can't easily pass on extra costs, so profits shrink and new projects stall. This threatens jobs in construction and could drag down the broader economy. The lumber trade fight isn't just a builder's problem, it's a risk to national economic health. At a sensitive time, every extra dollar counts. The stakes are higher than ever. With Canada's carbon fee in place, the US faces tough choices. The American lumber industry calls the fee unfair and will pressure Washington to fight back. One option challenged Canada at the World Trade Organization, arguing the fee is a disguised tariff. But Canada's defense is strong. It applies the same carbon tax to its own producers, meeting WTO rules. A legal fight would be risky and uncertain for the US. There's also a bigger threat. Canada could expand the fee to other wood products, putting $36 billion in trade at risk. Southern states, major exporters of pulp and paper, would be hit hard. Meanwhile, US companies are adapting. Some may shift production to Canada to take advantage of cleaner energy and avoid the fee. Ironically, Canada's policy could attract US investment, turning the tables on the original intent of tariffs. The game has changed. Carbon footprint is now a business strategy. The next moves will shape the future of North American trade. The US-Canada lumber dispute has become a battle over climate policy as much as trade. Canada's carbon border fee ties the cost of lumber to its environmental impact, forcing everyone to consider carbon footprints. For American homebuyers, the result is higher prices and little relief in sight. But from an environmental perspective, Canada's policy could push US producers to clean up their act. The fee revenue, over $420 million CAD in the first year, will fund Canada's green industrial strategy. In a twist, US industry may end up financing Canada's low-carbon transition. The future of trade and climate policy is now intertwined. Short-term pain for the US housing market could mean long-term gains in sustainability. Whether this leads to more trade wars or a greener economy remains to be seen. One thing's clear, the price of a 2x4 is now about more than just wood. Thanks for watching a video. And subscribe to the channel Skytech-Lens for more updates. Thanks.